In the quiet town of Maplewood, nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, life moved at a predictable pace. People went about their routines with little fuss, knowing each other by name and sharing stories over cups of coffee at the local diner. It was a place where nothing much seemed to happen, until one fateful day when Judge Harold Thompson found himself face to face with someone who would challenge everything he thought he knew about justice, fairness, and human potential. Judge Harold Thompson had been presiding over the Maplewood courthouse for nearly 3 decades. A tall man with graying hair and piercing blue eyes, he commanded respect simply by walking into a room. His reputation was well earned. He was known for his sharp mind, unwavering integrity, and no-nonsense approach to the law. Over the years, he had seen all kinds of cases, some trivial, others deeply complex, but none had ever left him questioning his own judgment quite like the one that unfolded on this particular morning. It started like any other day. The courtroom buzzed with the usual murmurs as people settled into their seats. Lawyers shuffled papers, witnesses prepared themselves nervously, and court clerks ensured everything was in order. Today's docket included a minor property dispute between 2 neighbors, an older man claiming encroachment on his land and a younger woman defending her right to use part of it. What made this case unusual, however, was not its subject matter, but rather the defendant herself, a young woman named Karoline Leavitt. Karoline stood out immediately. She couldn't have been more than 25, dressed in a simple navy blue dress that spoke of modesty rather than wealth. Her dark hair was pulled back neatly, and her hands trembled slightly as she held a stack of documents close to her chest. Yet there was something about her presence, an air of quiet determination, that caught Judge Thompson's attention. When asked to state her case, she spoke clearly and confidently, despite the intimidating atmosphere of the courtroom. Unlike many defendants who appeared before him, she didn't seem overwhelmed or intimidated by the formalities of the legal process. The plaintiff's lawyer, Mr. Caldwell, was a seasoned professional with decades of experience under his belt. He exuded confidence, striding up to the podium with an easy smile and addressing the judge with practiced charm. As he laid out his arguments, citing statutes and precedents, Judge Thompson nodded approvingly. It was clear that Mr. Caldwell had done his homework. But then came Karoline's turn to respond, and that's when things began to shift. Instead of stumbling over legal jargon or fumbling through explanations, Karoline countered every point raised by Mr. Caldwell with remarkable precision. She cited specific sections of local ordinances, referenced past court decisions, and even pointed out inconsistencies in the plaintiff's claims. Her knowledge of the law was so thorough that it took everyone by surprise, including Judge Thompson. At first, he assumed she must have hired some behind-the-scenes help, perhaps consulting with a lawyer privately. But as the hearing progressed, it became evident that Karoline was relying solely on her own understanding. This revelation unsettled the judge. Here was a young woman without any formal legal training, standing toe-to-toe with a highly experienced attorney, and holding her ground admirably. Judge Thompson couldn't deny her competence, yet he struggled to reconcile it with his preconceived notions. In his long career, he had encountered countless self-represented litigants, most of whom were ill-prepared and often emotional. They usually ended up making mistakes that sabotaged their cases, but Karoline defied these stereotypes completely. Instead of crumbling under pressure, she thrived, turning the courtroom into a stage where her intellect shone brightly. Despite his growing admiration, Judge Thompson maintained his stern demeanor. He peppered her with tough questions, testing the limits of her knowledge. "Miss Leavitt," he said at one point, leaning forward slightly, "you seem to have a firm grasp of property law. However, can you explain how your interpretation aligns with the broader principles of equity?" For a moment, silence hung heavy in the air. Then, with a calmness that belied the tension in the room, Karoline launched into a detailed explanation, weaving together historical context, legislative intent, and practical implications. By the time she finished, even Mr. Caldwell looked impressed. As the hours ticked by, the courtroom grew increasingly tense. Spectators whispered among themselves, marveling at the unfolding drama. Some admired Karoline's courage. Others doubted whether she could sustain her momentum against such formidable opposition. Meanwhile, Judge Thompson wrestled with conflicting emotions. On one hand, he felt a grudging respect for her abilities. On the other, he couldn't shake off his initial skepticism. Was she truly as knowledgeable as she appeared? Or was she merely lucky? And if she was indeed brilliant, what did that say about his own biases? The final stretch of the hearing proved decisive. Mr. Caldwell, sensing that his advantage was slipping away, launched a last-ditch effort to discredit Karoline. He bombarded her with technicalities, throwing curveballs designed to confuse anyone unfamiliar with the intricacies of the law. But Karoline remained unfazed. With each question, she responded with clarity and authority, dismantling his arguments, piece by piece. By the end, it was clear to everyone in the room, including Judge Thompson, that she had won the intellectual battle. When the verdict was finally announced, the courtroom erupted in applause. Karoline's victory wasn't just a personal triumph. It was a testament to the power of perseverance and hard work. Outside, reporters eagerly awaited her exit, cameras flashing as they clamored for interviews. For once, Judge Thompson allowed himself a small smile as he watched the scene unfold. Though he had initially underestimated her, he now recognized that Karoline Leavitt was unlike anyone he had ever met, a true legal prodigy hiding in plain sight. But the story didn't end there. Over the next few days, Judge Thompson found himself replaying moments from the trial in his mind. He thought about how confidently Karoline had navigated the complexities of the law, how effortlessly she had countered challenges that would stump even seasoned professionals. Slowly, a realization dawned on him. He had misjudged her, not because of malice, but because of his own ingrained assumptions. This realization troubled him deeply. As a judge, impartiality was supposed to be his guiding principle. Yet here, he was guilty of letting bias cloud his judgment. Determined to set things right, Judge Thompson decided to take action. He reached out to Karoline personally, inviting her to meet him at his chambers. When she arrived, looking somewhat nervous, but composed, he greeted her warmly and apologized for his earlier behavior. "Miss Leavitt," he said earnestly, "I owe you an apology. I underestimated you, and for that, I am truly sorry." Taken aback by his sincerity, Karoline accepted his apology graciously. Their conversation soon turned to her future plans, and Judge Thompson offered to mentor her, recognizing her potential to achieve great things in the legal world. Thus began an unlikely friendship between the seasoned judge and the self-taught legal genius. Under Judge Thompson's guidance, Karoline honed her skills further, eventually enrolling in law school to formalize her education. Along the way, she inspired countless others, proving that brilliance knows no boundaries and that anyone willing to put in the effort can rise above adversity. As for Judge Thompson, he discovered a renewed sense of purpose, proud to have played a role in nurturing a talent that would go on to change lives, including his own. Karoline Leavitt's journey from a small-town resident to a courtroom sensation wasn't something that happened overnight. In fact, her story began years before she ever stepped foot into Judge Harold Thompson's courtroom. Born into a modest family, Karoline grew up in a tiny apartment on the outskirts of Maplewood. Her father worked as a mechanic while her mother juggled odd jobs to make ends meet. Money was always tight, but what the Leavitt household lacked in material wealth, it made up for in love and determination. From a young age, Karoline was taught the value of hard work and perseverance. Her parents often reminded her that education was the key to a better life, though they never imagined how far their daughter would take that lesson. As a child, Karoline was curious about everything. She loved reading books borrowed from the local library, devouring stories about history, science, and even law. At first, her interest in legal matters stemmed from watching old courtroom dramas on television with her grandmother. Something about the way lawyers argued cases, presenting evidence and crafting compelling narratives, fascinated her. By the time she was 12, she had already memorized entire passages from famous speeches given by real-life attorneys. Teachers noticed her sharp mind and encouraged her to pursue her interests, but life outside school often got in the way. When Karoline turned 16, her family faced an unexpected crisis. Her father suffered a severe injury at work, leaving him unable to perform his duties. Medical bills piled up, forcing Karoline to drop out of high school so she could help support the family. For the next few years, she worked long hours at a diner, serving meals to customers who rarely tipped well. Despite the grueling schedule, she refused to give up on her dreams. Every night after finishing her shift, she would return home exhausted but determined. Instead of sleeping, she spent hours poring over law textbooks borrowed from the library. It was during these late-night study sessions that Karoline discovered her true passion, understanding the intricacies of the law. Her self-education wasn't easy. Without access to formal classes or guidance from professors, she relied entirely on her own resourcefulness. She read case studies, analyzed landmark decisions, and practiced writing arguments based on hypothetical scenarios. Sometimes, she would visit the courthouse during lunch breaks, observing trials from the gallery to learn how lawyers presented their cases. Over time, she developed a deep appreciation for the principles of justice and fairness, recognizing that the law wasn't just about rules, it was about protecting people's rights and ensuring equality. The property dispute that brought her to Judge Thompson's courtroom was rooted in a long-standing feud between her neighbor, Mr. Peterson, and herself. The disagreement centered around a narrow strip of land that both parties claimed ownership of. According to Mr. Peterson, the area belonged to him because it fell within the boundaries outlined in his deed. Karoline, however, argued that she had inherited the right to use the land from her late grandfather, who had verbally agreed to share it with the previous owner decades ago. When negotiations failed, Mr. Peterson filed a lawsuit, confident that his lawyer's expertise would secure a quick victory. At first, Karoline considered hiring a lawyer to represent her, but after consulting with a few firms, she realized she couldn't afford their fees. Undeterred, she decided to represent herself, knowing full well the challenges she would face. Friends and family warned her against it, telling her she was setting herself up for failure. "You're going up against professionals," her mother said one evening. Worry etched across her face. "What if you lose?" Karoline simply smiled and replied, "Then I'll know I did everything I could." Preparing for the trial consumed every waking moment. Karoline meticulously gathered documents including old letters, photographs, and property records to build her case. She studied legal precedents related to boundary disputes, taking detailed notes and organizing them into folders. Late at night, when the house was quiet, she rehearsed her arguments aloud, imagining how the opposing counsel might respond. Though fear occasionally crept in, she pushed through it, reminding herself why she was fighting, not just for the land, but for the principle of honoring promises made in good faith. On the day of the trial, Karoline arrived at the courthouse, early, clutching her folder tightly. As she walked past the towering columns of the building, she felt a mix of excitement and dread. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Mr. Peterson sat confidently beside his lawyer, while spectators filled the benches, eager to witness the outcome. When Judge Thompson entered the room, the crowd rose to its feet, and Karoline took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. From the very beginning, the odds seemed stacked against her. Mr. Caldwell, the plaintiff's attorney, wasted no time launching into a polished opening statement. He spoke eloquently, using technical terms and citing statutes that painted his client as the clear victim of encroachment. Karoline listened intently, nodding occasionally to show she understood. When it was her turn to speak, she stood calmly, her voice steady despite the weight of the situation. She began by acknowledging the complexity of the issue, then methodically laid out her argument, referencing specific laws and historical agreements that supported her claim. Judge Thompson watched closely, his expression unreadable. He had seen countless defendants crumble under similar circumstances, overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the legal system, yet Karoline remained composed, answering questions with precision and addressing counter-arguments without hesitation. Even when Mr. Caldwell attempted to discredit her points by introducing obscure legal doctrines, she responded with clarity, demonstrating a level of knowledge that left everyone, including the judge, stunned. Throughout the trial, Karoline's confidence grew. Each successful rebuttal bolstered her resolve, and each nod of approval from the audience reinforced her belief that she was on the right path. By the time closing statements were delivered, the mood in the courtroom had shifted dramatically. What had started as a routine property dispute had transformed into a showcase of raw talent and determination. Spectators whispered among themselves, marveling at the young woman who dared to challenge a seasoned lawyer and win. As the jury deliberated, Karoline waited anxiously outside the courtroom, pacing back and forth. Her heart raced with anticipation, unsure whether all her hard work would pay off. Finally, the verdict was announced, in favor of Karoline Leavitt. Cheers erupted from the crowd, and tears streamed down her face as she hugged her mother, who had come to support her. For the first time in months, the weight on her shoulders lifted, replaced by a sense of vindication and pride. Judge Thompson congratulated her afterward, shaking her hand firmly. "Miss Leavitt," he said, his tone warmer than before, "you've proven today that dedication and intelligence can overcome even the toughest obstacles." Though he still harbored doubts about her lack of formal training, he couldn't deny the brilliance she had displayed. That evening, as he sat alone in his chambers reviewing the case files, he found himself reflecting on the encounter. Was it possible that he had underestimated her not out of malice, but because of his own biases? And if so, what did that mean for his role as a judge? These questions lingered in his mind long after the trial ended. Over the following weeks, Judge Thompson followed news reports about Karoline, intrigued by the public's fascination with her story. Reporters praised her tenacity, calling her a symbol of hope for underdogs everywhere. Law professors invited her to speak at universities, eager to understand how someone without formal training could master such a challenging field. Meanwhile, Judge Thompson wrestled with his conscience, realizing that he owed Karoline more than just an apology. He owed her recognition for her extraordinary abilities. One afternoon, unable to ignore his growing admiration, Judge Thompson picked up the phone and dialed Karoline's number. When she answered, he introduced himself formally, explaining that he wanted to discuss her future. They met at a nearby cafe, where he expressed his regret for doubting her and offered to mentor her. "You have a gift, Miss Leavitt," he told her earnestly, "and gifts like yours shouldn't go to waste." Touched by his sincerity, Karoline accepted his offer, marking the beginning of a partnership that would change both their lives forever. Karoline Leavitt's life changed in ways she could never have imagined after her unexpected victory in Judge Harold Thompson's courtroom. The media attention was overwhelming at first. Reporters camped outside her modest home, eager to capture sound bites and snapshots of the young woman who had beaten a seasoned lawyer without formal training. At grocery stores, strangers approached her to congratulate her, some even asking for advice on their own legal troubles. For someone who had always lived quietly, this sudden fame felt surreal. Yet, despite the chaos, Karoline remained grounded, focusing on what truly mattered, using her newfound platform to inspire others and continue learning. Judge Thompson's offer of mentorship came at the perfect time. Though Karoline was proud of her achievement, she knew there was still so much she didn't know. Winning one case didn't make her an expert, it merely proved that she had potential. Under Judge Thompson's guidance, she began diving deeper into the complexities of the law, exploring areas she hadn't touched before. He introduced her to influential figures in the legal community, judges, attorneys, and academics, who were equally fascinated by her story. These connections opened doors she never thought possible, giving her access to resources and opportunities that would help shape her future. Their mentoring sessions took place in Judge Thompson's chambers, a space filled with towering bookshelves lined with leather-bound volumes and framed certificates. The two would sit across from each other at a large oak table, poring over case studies and discussing hypothetical scenarios. Judge Thompson challenged her constantly, pushing her to think critically and consider multiple perspectives. "The law isn't black and white," he often reminded her. "It's about finding balance between competing interests while upholding justice." His lessons went beyond technical knowledge. They taught her the importance of empathy, integrity, and humility. As weeks turned into months, Karoline's confidence grew. She started attending local bar association meetings, where she networked with professionals and gained insights into the inner workings of the legal world. At first, she felt out of place among people who had spent years studying in prestigious institutions. But instead of letting imposter syndrome take hold, she embraced her unique journey. When asked how she had learned so much on her own, she simply smiled and said, "I read a lot, and I never stopped believing I could do it." One evening, during a particularly lively discussion at a bar association dinner, a senior attorney named Margaret Hayes approached Karoline. Margaret was known for her sharp wit and no-nonsense attitude, traits that earned her respect throughout the legal community. After exchanging pleasantries, Margaret leaned in and said, "You're wasting your talent if you don't go to law school." Karoline hesitated, unsure how to respond. The idea of pursuing higher education had crossed her mind, but financial constraints made it seem impossible. Sensing her hesitation, Margaret added, "There are scholarships out there for people like you. Don't let fear or doubt hold you back." Those words stuck with Karoline long after the event ended. That night, as she lay awake staring at the ceiling, she thought about all the sacrifices her parents had made to keep their family afloat. They had worked tirelessly to provide her with opportunities, even when times were tough. Now it was her turn to invest in herself, not just for her own benefit, but to honor their hard work. With renewed determination, she began researching law schools and scholarship programs, determined to find a way forward. Judge Thompson supported her decision wholeheartedly. "Education is the foundation of greatness," he told her during one of their sessions. "But remember, Miss Leavitt, your strength lies not just in your intellect, it's in your resilience. Never lose sight of that." Encouraged by his words, Karoline applied to several universities, pouring her heart into every essay and interview. Her application stood out not because of polished credentials, but because of her raw passion and unwavering commitment to justice. Months later, when the acceptance letters started arriving, Karoline couldn't believe her eyes. One of them was from a top-tier law school, an institution she had once dismissed as unattainable. The letter praised her remarkable intellectual curiosity and highlighted her extraordinary ability to navigate complex legal concepts. It was a validation of everything she had worked toward, a testament to the power of perseverance. When she shared the news with Judge Thompson, tears welled up in his eyes. "I always knew you were destined for greatness," he said softly. "Now the world will see it too." Attending law school marked a new chapter in Karoline's life. Leaving behind the familiarity of Maplewood, she moved to a bustling city where skyscrapers towered above crowded streets. The transition wasn't easy. Classes were rigorous, assignments piled up quickly, and competition among students was fierce. Many of her peers came from privileged backgrounds, having attended elite prep schools and Ivy League colleges. At times, Karoline doubted whether she belonged in such an environment. But whenever self-doubt crept in, she reminded herself why she was there: to prove that brilliance knows no boundaries. Her professors quickly recognized her potential. During class discussions, she offered insightful comments that sparked debates and challenged conventional thinking. In moot court competitions, she dazzled judges with her eloquence and strategic reasoning. Even her classmates, initially skeptical of the self-taught prodigy, came to admire her dedication and kindness. Far from being intimidated by her talent, they sought her advice, forming study groups and collaborating on projects. Karoline became a bridge between worlds, blending practical wisdom with academic rigor. Outside of academics, Karoline stayed connected to her roots. She volunteered at legal aid clinics, offering pro bono assistance to low-income individuals struggling with housing disputes, employment issues, and immigration challenges. Her experiences growing up in a working-class family gave her a unique perspective, allowing her to connect with clients on a personal level. "You remind me of myself," an elderly woman once told her after a consultation. "Never forget where you came from. It's what makes you special." Word of Karoline's achievements spread beyond the university, drawing attention from national media outlets. Journalists wrote feature articles about her journey, calling her a symbol of hope for underrepresented communities. Law firms reached out offering internships and job prospects. Yet, despite the accolades, Karoline remained humble. She credited her success not to innate genius, but to the support system around her. Her parents, Judge Thompson, and countless others who had believed in her when she doubted herself. Back in Maplewood, Judge Thompson followed her progress closely. Though retired now, he often reflected on the impact Karoline had on his life. Mentoring her had reignited his passion for justice, reminding him why he had chosen this career path in the first place. Their friendship deepened over phone calls and occasional visits, where they discussed everything from landmark Supreme Court rulings to the ethics of artificial intelligence in law. To Judge Thompson, Karoline wasn't just a protege. She was a kindred spirit who challenged him to grow alongside her. By the time Karoline graduated, she had earned top honors and delivered a stirring commencement speech that brought the audience to its feet. Standing on stage, she thanked everyone who had supported her journey, dedicating her success to the dreamers, the fighters, and the believers. Her words resonated deeply, inspiring graduates to pursue their passions regardless of obstacles. As she walked off stage, diploma in hand, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment, not because she had achieved perfection, but because she had stayed true to herself. The years that followed were transformative. Karoline joined a prestigious law firm where she specialized in civil rights cases, advocating for marginalized communities and challenging systemic injustices. Her reputation grew steadily, earning her recognition as one of the most promising young attorneys in the country. Yet she never forgot her roots. Every summer she returned to Maplewood, hosting workshops for aspiring lawyers and donating part of her earnings to local charities. Judge Thompson watched proudly as Karoline's star continued to rise. Though their paths diverged physically, their bond remained unbreakable. Together they proved that mentorship isn't just about teaching. It's about mutual growth, trust, and the belief that anyone can achieve greatness with the right support. Their story became a beacon of hope, reminding the world that brilliance often emerges from unexpected places, waiting to be discovered by those willing to look beyond appearances. As Karoline Leavitt's career took off, her life became a whirlwind of activity. The small-town girl who once juggled late-night shifts at a diner and self-study sessions now found herself navigating the fast-paced world of high-stakes litigation. Her days were filled with client meetings, courtroom appearances, and endless hours of research. Yet amidst the chaos, she never lost sight of her mission: to use the law as a tool for justice, especially for those who couldn't afford it. Her work ethic was unmatched, fueled by both ambition and gratitude for the opportunities she had been given. One of Karoline's first major cases after joining the prestigious law firm involved defending a group of factory workers who had been wrongfully terminated. The company accused them of negligence after a minor accident occurred on the production line, but the workers claimed they were being scapegoated to avoid paying overtime wages. It was a complex case, requiring not only legal expertise but also an understanding of labor laws and corporate practices. For Karoline, it felt personal. She saw echoes of her father's struggles in these men and women who worked tirelessly to support their families. From the outset, the odds seemed stacked against her. The opposing counsel represented one of the largest manufacturing companies in the region. With deep pockets and a team of highly skilled lawyers, they came prepared with mountains of documentation, technical jargon, and aggressive tactics designed to intimidate. But Karoline thrived under pressure. She spent countless nights analyzing evidence, cross-referencing statutes, and preparing arguments that would dismantle the company's narrative. Her strategy was meticulous, leaving no stone unturned. During the trial, Karoline's brilliance shone through. She questioned witnesses with precision, exposing inconsistencies in their testimonies. When the defense tried to discredit her clients by portraying them as careless or incompetent, she countered with emotional, yet fact-based, appeals, reminding the jury of the human cost behind the legal battle. "These aren't just names on a list," she said during her closing argument. "They are fathers, mothers, sons, and daughters who showed up every day, worked hard, and trusted their employer to treat them fairly. What happened to them isn't negligence, it's injustice. By the time she finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. The verdict came as a landslide victory for Karoline's clients. Not only did the judge rule in their favor, ordering the company to reinstate the workers and compensate them for lost wages, but the decision also set a precedent that strengthened protections for employees in similar situations. News of the win spread quickly, earning Karoline widespread acclaim. Labor unions praised her efforts, and community leaders hailed her as a champion for workers' rights. For Karoline, however, the real reward was seeing the relief and joy on her clients' faces when they realized they could return to their jobs without fear of retaliation. Despite her growing success, Karoline remained deeply connected to her roots. Every weekend, she made it a point to visit Maplewood, where her parents still lived. Sitting around the kitchen table, she shared stories about her cases, often seeking her mother's advice on how to handle difficult clients or her father's perspective on workplace dynamics. These conversations grounded her, reminding her of the values instilled in her from childhood: honesty, humility, and resilience. Her parents, though proud of her accomplishments, treated her the same way they always had, with warmth and unconditional love. Back in the city, Karoline continued to push boundaries. She took on cases that others deemed too risky or politically sensitive, ranging from police misconduct claims to environmental lawsuits against powerful corporations. Each case presented its own unique challenges, but Karoline approached them, all with the same determination and creativity. Her ability to think outside the box often caught opponents off guard. In one instance, while arguing a pollution-related case, she introduced drone footage showing toxic waste seeping into nearby rivers, a move that shocked the court and ultimately swayed public opinion in her favor. Her reputation as a fearless advocate grew rapidly, attracting attention not only from clients but also from aspiring lawyers eager to learn from her. Law schools began inviting her to speak at conferences and seminars, where she shared insights into her unconventional journey. Unlike many speakers who focused solely on their achievements, Karoline emphasized the importance of grit and perseverance. "I didn't have access to fancy degrees or connections," she told a packed auditorium during one such event. "What I did have was a library card, a dream, and the courage to keep going even when people doubted me. If I can do it, so can you." Judge Harold Thompson followed her progress closely, reading news articles and watching interviews with pride. Though retired, he occasionally attended events where Karoline spoke, sitting quietly in the back row like a proud mentor. Afterward, they would meet for coffee, discussing everything from recent Supreme Court rulings to societal changes affecting the legal profession. Their conversations were a blend of admiration and mutual respect, each learning from the other's experiences. Judge Thompson often joked that mentoring Karoline had taught him more than he ever expected, particularly about the power of adaptability and open-mindedness. Karoline's influence extended beyond the courtroom. Recognizing the need for systemic change, she launched initiatives aimed at increasing access to legal resources for underserved communities. One of her most ambitious projects was creating a free online platform where individuals could find information about their rights and connect with pro bono attorneys. Funded partly by donations and partly by grants, the platform quickly gained traction, helping thousands of people navigate complicated legal processes. Critics initially dismissed the idea as impractical, but Karoline's persistence paid off, proving that innovation could coexist with tradition. Not everything went smoothly, of course. There were moments of doubt and frustration, times when the weight of responsibility felt overwhelming. Once, after losing a particularly grueling case involving wrongful imprisonment, Karoline locked herself in her office, questioning whether she was truly making a difference. It was during this low point that Judge Thompson called her, sensing something was wrong. "Miss Leavitt," he said gently, "you're allowed to feel defeated sometimes. But remember this: failure doesn't define you, it refines you. You'll come out stronger because of it." His words provided comfort, reminding her that setbacks were part of the journey. Over time, Karoline developed a reputation not just as a brilliant lawyer but also as a compassionate leader. Colleagues admired her willingness to collaborate, sharing credit and supporting junior associates. Clients appreciated her empathy, knowing she genuinely cared about their well-being. Even adversaries respected her professionalism, acknowledging that she fought fiercely but fairly. Her presence in the legal community became a force for good, inspiring others to adopt ethical practices and prioritize justice over profit. Meanwhile, Judge Thompson continued to reflect on the impact Karoline had on his life. Mentoring her hadn't just reignited his passion for the law, it had reshaped his worldview. He realized that true greatness wasn't measured by titles or accolades, but by the ability to uplift others. Watching Karoline thrive reinforced his belief in the transformative power of mentorship, a lesson he carried with him long after his retirement. By the 5th year of her career, Karoline had become a household name. Magazines featured her on their covers, calling her a legal trailblazer and the voice of the voiceless. Yet, despite the fame, she remained humble, always crediting her success to the people who had supported her along the way. Whether addressing crowds at rallies or speaking privately with struggling families, she exuded authenticity, an unwavering commitment to using her skills for the greater good. Judge Thompson often thought about how far Karoline had come since that fateful day in his courtroom. From a young woman standing alone against seasoned professionals to a celebrated attorney shaping the future of the legal system, her journey was nothing short of extraordinary. And though their roles had shifted, from judge and defendant to mentor and protege, their bond remained unshakable, a testament to the enduring power of trust, growth, and shared purpose. Together they proved that brilliance often emerges from unexpected places, waiting to be nurtured by those brave enough to believe in its potential. As Karoline Leavitt's reputation continued to grow, so did the scope of her work. Her name became synonymous with groundbreaking legal victories and innovative approaches to justice. Yet, for all her success, she remained acutely aware of the challenges facing the legal system. Too often she saw how power imbalances favored those with wealth and influence, leaving ordinary people struggling to navigate a complex and intimidating process. Determined to address these disparities, Karoline began advocating for systemic reforms that would make the law more accessible and equitable. One of her most ambitious initiatives was pushing for changes in how civil cases were handled. She argued that many individuals were denied fair treatment simply because they couldn't afford proper representation. To illustrate this point, she took on several high-profile pro bono cases involving low-income families battling predatory lending practices. These cases not only exposed unethical behavior by financial institutions, but also highlighted the urgent need for policy changes. Karoline worked tirelessly behind the scenes, collaborating with lawmakers and advocacy groups to draft legislation that would protect vulnerable consumers. Her efforts eventually led to the passage of stricter regulations, earning praise from both sides of the political aisle. Karoline's commitment to reform didn't stop at domestic issues. As global awareness of human rights violations increased, she expanded her focus to include international law. She traveled to conflict zones, meeting with refugees and survivors of war crimes to document their stories. Her first-hand experiences deepened her understanding of the atrocities faced by marginalized communities worldwide. Back home, she used this knowledge to lobby for stronger enforcement of international treaties and greater accountability for perpetrators of violence. Though some criticized her for taking on causes that seemed beyond her jurisdiction, Karoline believed that justice had no borders. These endeavors required immense sacrifice. Long hours away from family and friends took a toll on her personal life. There were days when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her, and nights when sleep eluded her as she wrestled with the weight of responsibility. But Karoline drew strength from the people she served, the single mother fighting eviction, the immigrant seeking asylum, the teenager wrongfully accused of a crime. Their resilience inspired her to keep going, even when the path ahead seemed uncertain. Judge Harold Thompson watched Karoline's evolution with a mix of pride and concern. He admired her unwavering dedication, but worried about the toll it might take on her health and well-being. During one of their regular coffee meetings, he broached the subject gently. "Miss Leavitt," he said, stirring his cup thoughtfully, "you've accomplished more in 5 years than most lawyers do in a lifetime. But remember, justice isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. You can't pour from an empty cup." Karoline nodded, appreciating his wisdom. She knew he was right. Sustaining her impact over the long term meant prioritizing self-care without losing sight of her goals. To strike a balance, Karoline began delegating tasks more effectively within her firm. She mentored young attorneys, teaching them not only technical skills but also the importance of empathy and integrity. Many of her protégés went on to pursue careers in public interest law, carrying forward her legacy of service. Outside of work, she reconnected with hobbies she had neglected during her busiest years, painting landscapes and playing piano. These creative outlets provided much-needed respite, allowing her to recharge while maintaining her passion for advocacy. Despite her growing stature, Karoline never shied away from difficult conversations. In fact, she embraced controversy, using her platform to challenge outdated norms and spark meaningful dialogue. One such moment occurred during a televised debate on criminal justice reform. Opponents argued that leniency would undermine public safety, citing statistics and fear-based rhetoric. Karoline countered with data showing how rehabilitation programs reduced recidivism rates and saved taxpayer dollars. More importantly, she shared anecdotes from former inmates who had turned their lives around thanks to supportive policies. Her ability to combine logic with emotion left a lasting impression, swaying public opinion and paving the way for legislative action. Her advocacy extended into education as well. Recognizing the lack of diversity in the legal profession, Karoline partnered with schools and community organizations to create pipelines for underrepresented students. She funded scholarships, organized mock trial competitions, and hosted workshops designed to demystify the path to becoming a lawyer. "Representation matters," she told a group of high school students during one visit. "When you see someone who looks like you succeeding in a field, it makes dreams feel attainable. I want every one of you to know that your voice matters, and that the world needs what only you can offer." The ripple effects of Karoline's efforts were felt far and wide. Former classmates from law school reached out, expressing gratitude for her mentorship and inspiration. Clients whose lives she had touched sent heartfelt letters, thanking her for restoring their faith in humanity. Even critics softened their stance, acknowledging her contributions to the profession. Yet, through it all, Karoline stayed humble, deflecting praise onto the collective effort of everyone involved. "Change doesn't happen because of one person," she often said. "It happens because we stand together." Meanwhile, Judge Thompson found himself reflecting on his own legacy. Watching Karoline tackle global issues and inspire generations reminded him of the profound impact one individual could have. Though retired, he still contributed to the legal community by writing articles and giving lectures. His writings frequently referenced Karoline's journey, urging readers to embrace innovation and inclusivity. "The law is a living entity," he wrote in one essay. "It must evolve to meet the needs of society, and if we are fortunate enough to encounter brilliance, our duty is to nurture it, not suppress it." Their friendship continued to flourish, built on mutual respect and shared values. They often discussed the future of the legal system, brainstorming ideas for further improvements. Judge Thompson marveled at Karoline's ability to remain optimistic despite the obstacles she faced. "How do you stay hopeful?" he once asked her. Without hesitation, she replied, "Because I've seen what's possible. When people come together with purpose and determination, there's nothing we can't achieve." By the 7th year of her career, Karoline had become a global icon. Invitations poured in from universities, governments, and non-profit organizations, eager to hear her insights. She addressed the United Nations, delivering a powerful speech on the intersection of law and morality. "Justice isn't just about punishing wrongdoing," she declared. "It's about creating a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive, a world where fairness isn't the exception, but the rule. Her words resonated deeply, sparking movements for change across continents. Back in Maplewood, her hometown, celebrated her achievements with a special ceremony. The mayor presented her with a key to the city, calling her a beacon of hope for aspiring leaders everywhere. Friends and neighbors gathered to honor her, sharing stories of how she had touched their lives. For Karoline, the event was bittersweet. While she cherished the recognition, she couldn't help but think of all the people who had helped her along the way. Her parents, Judge Thompson, and countless others who believed in her when she doubted herself. As the years passed, Karoline's influence only grew stronger. She founded a nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing legal education and access to justice. Through partnerships with tech companies, she developed tools that simplified legal procedures, making them easier for laypeople to understand. Her vision was clear: a world where no one was left behind because of ignorance or inequality. Critics initially dismissed her ideas as idealistic, but as results began to show, even skeptics had to admit she was onto something revolutionary. Judge Thompson, now in his late 70s, attended the launch of Karoline's nonprofit, beaming with pride as he watched her deliver the keynote address. Afterward, they sat together under a tree, reminiscing about their journey. "You've changed the game, Miss Leavitt," he said, his voice tinged with admiration. "But tell me, what's next for you?" Karoline smiled, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "The work is never done," she replied. "There's always another mountain to climb, another injustice to fight. And as long as there are people willing to stand up, I'll be there beside them." Their bond transcended titles and roles. It was a partnership rooted in trust, growth, and shared purpose. Together, they proved that brilliance often emerges from unexpected places, waiting to be nurtured by those brave enough to believe in its potential. Karoline Leavitt's story wasn't just about personal triumph. It was a testament to the transformative power of mentorship, resilience, and unwavering belief in the possibility of a better tomorrow. As Karoline Leavitt entered the 8th year of her career, she found herself at a crossroads. Her accomplishments were undeniable. She had won landmark cases, inspired thousands, and reshaped aspects of the legal system. But the relentless pace of her life began to weigh on her. The constant travel, late nights, and emotional toll of bearing witness to human suffering left her feeling stretched thin. For the first time, she questioned whether she could sustain this level of commitment without losing herself in the process. It was during one of these reflective moments that Judge Harold Thompson offered her some unexpected advice. "You've spent years giving to others," he told her during one of their coffee meetings. "Now it's time to give something back, to yourself." At first, Karoline dismissed his words, thinking they didn't apply to someone like her. How could she step back when there was still so much work to be done? But as days turned into weeks, his advice lingered in her mind. She realized that taking care of herself wasn't selfish. It was necessary if she wanted to continue making an impact. Slowly, she began carving out space for personal growth, rediscovering parts of herself that had been overshadowed by ambition. One of the biggest changes came when Karoline decided to take a sabbatical. For 3 months, she stepped away from her demanding schedule to focus on writing a book about her experiences. Titled "From the Margins to the Center," it chronicled her journey from a self-taught legal enthusiast to a global advocate for justice. The book wasn't just a memoir. It was also a call to action, offering practical advice for aspiring lawyers and underscoring the importance of empathy in the legal profession. As she wrote, she reflected on the lessons she had learned, not only about the law but also about resilience, humility, and the power of community. The publication of her book marked another milestone in Karoline's life. It became an instant bestseller, praised by critics and readers alike for its honesty and insight. Bookstores invited her to host signings and discussions where crowds lined up for hours to meet her. What struck people most was her authenticity. Unlike many public figures who carefully curated their image, Karoline spoke openly about her struggles, the sleepless nights, the moments of doubt, the fear of failure. Her vulnerability resonated deeply, reminding others that success isn't linear and that setbacks are part of the journey. During her sabbatical, Karoline also reconnected with nature, something she hadn't prioritized since moving to the city. She rented a small cabin near Maplewood, spending weekends hiking through forests and sitting by lakes. These quiet moments allowed her to recharge, providing clarity and perspective. One afternoon, while walking along a trail, she stumbled upon a group of teenagers volunteering to clean up litter. Inspired by their initiative, she joined them, rolling up her sleeves and working alongside them. By the end of the day, they had cleared acres of land, transforming it into a pristine sanctuary. That evening, as they sat around a campfire sharing stories, Karoline felt a renewed sense of purpose. Change didn't always require grand gestures. Sometimes it started with small acts of kindness. When she returned to work, Karoline brought this newfound balance with her. She continued advocating for systemic reforms but approached her tasks with a lighter spirit. Instead of trying to solve every problem herself, she empowered others to take ownership of projects. This shift not only eased her workload but also fostered collaboration within her team. Young lawyers flourished under her guidance, gaining confidence in their abilities. Clients noticed the difference too, describing her demeanor as calmer yet equally passionate. "She listens more now," one client remarked. "It's like she truly understands what we're going through." Karoline's influence extended beyond traditional boundaries of the legal world. She began exploring creative ways to engage broader audiences, using storytelling and technology to amplify her message. With the help of filmmakers, she produced a documentary series highlighting real-life cases of injustice and the individuals fighting against them. Each episode combined legal analysis with raw human emotion, shedding light on issues often overlooked by mainstream media. The series aired on streaming platforms, reaching millions of viewers worldwide. Critics hailed it as groundbreaking, noting how it bridged the gap between entertainment and education. Her innovative approach caught the attention of tech entrepreneurs, who approached her with ideas for leveraging artificial intelligence in the legal field. Together, they developed tools designed to simplify complex legal processes, such as generating contracts or filing court documents. These innovations aimed to reduce barriers for individuals navigating the system alone. Though initially skeptical of relying on technology, Karoline recognized its potential to democratize access to justice. "The law should serve everyone," she said during a panel discussion. "If technology can make that happen, then we have a responsibility to embrace it." Despite her expanded focus, Karoline never lost sight of her roots. Every holiday season she returned to Maplewood, where she hosted free legal clinics for residents. Families lined up outside the community center, seeking advice on everything from tenant rights to custody battles. Karoline worked tirelessly alongside volunteers, ensuring no one left without answers. To her, these clinics weren't just acts of service. They were reminders of why she had chosen this path in the first place. "Helping one person might not change the world," she often said, "but it changes the world for that person." Judge Thompson remained a steadfast presence in her life, offering guidance whenever needed. Though his health had declined slightly, with age, his mind remained sharp, and his passion for justice burned as brightly as ever. During one visit, he handed her a leather-bound journal filled with notes and reflections he had written over the years. "For you," he said simply. Inside, she found pages detailing his thoughts on fairness, leadership, and the evolving role of judges in society. Some entries were philosophical, while others were deeply personal, recounting moments of triumph and regret. Reading them felt like peering into his soul, and Karoline cherished the gift immensely. Their conversations grew even more profound as time passed. They discussed legacy, not in terms of accolades or achievements, but in terms of lasting impact. "What do you want people to remember about you?" Judge Thompson asked her one evening. Karoline paused, considering the question carefully. "I want them to remember that I cared," she replied. "That I fought for those who couldn't fight for themselves, and that I believed in the possibility of a better future." He nodded approvingly, adding, "Then you've already succeeded." By the 10th year of her career, Karoline had become a symbol of hope and transformation. Universities named scholarships after her, honoring students committed to public interest, law. Cities erected statues in her honor, celebrating her contributions to justice and equality. Yet, none of these tributes mattered as much to her as the letters she received from ordinary people whose lives she had touched. A single mother wrote to thank her for helping secure child support payments. A former inmate credited her advocacy for turning his life around. A young girl dreamed of becoming a lawyer because she saw Karoline as proof that anything was possible. Through it all, Karoline remained grounded, attributing her success to the collective effort of countless individuals. "I didn't build this alone," she often reminded audiences. "Every victory belongs to the communities who stood with me, the mentors who guided me, and the clients who trusted me." Her humility endeared her to people across generations, earning her a reputation as not just a brilliant lawyer, but also a compassionate human being. Judge Thompson watched her final years unfold with a mixture of pride and nostalgia. He knew that his own time was limited, but he took comfort in knowing that Karoline would carry forward the values they shared. On his 85th birthday, surrounded by friends and family, he delivered a heartfelt toast. "To Miss Leavitt," he said, raising his glass, "a woman who taught me that brilliance has no limits, and that true greatness lies in lifting others as you rise." Tears welled up in Karoline's eyes as she hugged him tightly, grateful for the bond they had forged. As the decades passed, Karoline's legacy endured. Her nonprofit organization continued thriving, expanding its reach to remote corners of the globe. Law schools incorporated her methods into their curricula, training future generations to think critically and act compassionately. And though she eventually retired from active practice, her voice remained alive through her writings, speeches, and the countless lives she had transformed. People remembered her not just for what she achieved, but for who she was. A beacon of hope, a champion of justice, and a testament to the power of belief. As the years rolled on, Karoline Leavitt's legacy continued to grow, not just as a symbol of legal brilliance, but as a testament to the enduring power of compassion and resilience. Her journey had been one of transformation, not only for herself, but also for the countless lives she touched along the way. Now in her late 40s, Karoline found herself reflecting more deeply on the ripple effects of her work. The seeds she had planted decades earlier, through pro bono clinics, mentorship programs, and systemic reforms, had blossomed into thriving initiatives that spanned continents. Yet, what brought her the most joy was seeing how those efforts inspired others to take action. One such person was Maya Patel, a young lawyer who had attended one of Karoline's workshops during law school. At the time, Maya was struggling with self-doubt, unsure if she belonged in a profession dominated by privilege and tradition. But after hearing Karoline speak about overcoming adversity and staying true to one's values, something shifted within her. Years later, Maya founded a nonprofit organization focused on providing free legal aid to immigrant families facing deportation. When she called Karoline to thank her for the inspiration, Karoline simply smiled and said, "You're the one who did the hard work. I just reminded you of what you already knew, that your voice matters." Stories like Maya's were everywhere. Former clients turned advocates, mentees became leaders, and communities rallied around causes ignited by Karoline's vision. A group of teenagers from Maplewood, inspired by her environmental cleanup efforts, launched a nationwide campaign to combat climate change. They called themselves Karoline's Kids, though she insisted they rename it to reflect their own identities. Still, the nickname stuck, becoming a badge of honor for young activists determined to make a difference. Whenever Karoline visited her hometown, these kids would gather around her, eager to share updates on their projects. Their enthusiasm filled her with hope, reminding her that the fight for justice was far from over, and that the next generation was ready to lead. Judge Harold Thompson passed away peacefully at the age of 92, leaving behind a profound void in Karoline's life. Though his absence weighed heavily on her, she found solace in the memories they had shared and the lessons he had imparted. During his final days, he had written her a letter, which she discovered among his belongings. In it, he expressed his gratitude for having known her, calling her the greatest gift of his career. "You taught me that justice isn't confined to courtrooms," he wrote. "It lives in the hearts of those who dare to believe in a better world." Reading those words, Karoline felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that his spirit would always guide her. In the years following Judge Thompson's death, Karoline dedicated herself to preserving his memory. She established the Harold Thompson Fellowship, an annual award given to aspiring judges committed to fairness and innovation in the legal system. The fellowship included funding for advanced education, mentorship opportunities, and access to a network of professionals dedicated to ethical leadership. Each recipient was required to complete a project addressing a pressing issue in their community, ensuring that Judge Thompson's principles of integrity and service lived on through their actions. Though she officially retired from active legal practice, Karoline remained a vocal advocate for justice, using her platform to address emerging challenges. Technological advancements while offering solutions also raised new ethical dilemmas, from data privacy concerns to algorithmic biases in sentencing. Karoline embraced these complexities, collaborating with experts to develop guidelines that balanced innovation with accountability. She spoke at conferences, participated in think tanks, and engaged with policymakers, urging them to consider the human implications of every decision. Her ability to bridge gaps between disciplines made her a trusted advisor, sought after by leaders across industries. Her personal life flourished as well. After years of focusing solely on her career, Karoline reconnected with old friends and nurtured relationships that had taken a back seat during her busiest years. She adopted a rescue dog named Luna, whose playful antics brought laughter and lightness into her home. Weekends were spent gardening, painting, or volunteering at local shelters, activities that grounded her and reminded her of life's simple joys. People often remarked on how content she seemed, noting the serenity in her eyes, a stark contrast to the fierce determination that had once defined her public persona. Yet, even in retirement, Karoline couldn't resist the pull of activism. When a global health crisis struck, disproportionately affecting marginalized communities, she sprang into action. Partnering with medical professionals and social workers, she helped establish mobile clinics that provided free health care and legal assistance to underserved populations. These clinics traveled to remote areas, reaching people who otherwise would have fallen through the cracks. Karoline personally visited several sites, listening to patients' stories and advocating for policies that addressed root causes of inequality. Her hands-on approach earned her widespread admiration, proving that age was no barrier to making an impact. As the world evolved, so did Karoline's methods. She embraced digital platforms, hosting webinars and podcasts to engage younger audiences. Her discussions covered a wide range of topics from criminal justice reform to mental health advocacy, always emphasizing the importance of empathy and collaboration. Viewers appreciated her candidness, often commenting on how relatable she was despite her accomplishments. "She makes you feel like you can change the world," one listener wrote, "and then she gives you the tools to actually do it." Her influence extended beyond borders, as international organizations invited her to consult on humanitarian efforts. From negotiating peace agreements to designing educational programs for refugees, Karoline tackled each challenge with the same unwavering commitment that had marked her early days in the courtroom. Colleagues marveled at her adaptability, noting how seamlessly she navigated diverse cultures and contexts. "She doesn't impose solutions," one diplomat observed. "She listens, learns, and empowers others to find answers that work for them." By the time Karoline reached her 60th birthday, she had become a living legend. Cities declared the day Karoline Leavitt Day, honoring her contributions to justice and equality. Friends, family, and admirers gathered to celebrate, sharing stories of how she had impacted their lives. Speakers ranged from former clients to heads of state, each highlighting a different facet of her legacy. When it was her turn to speak, Karoline stood before the crowd, her voice steady, yet filled with emotion. "I didn't set out to change the world," she began. "I set out to help one person, one family, one community, at a time. And somehow, together, we created something bigger than any of us could have imagined." The evening ended with a surprise tribute, a documentary titled The Ripple Effect, chronicling her journey from a small-town diner waitress to a global icon. Archival footage, interviews, and heartfelt testimonials painted a vivid picture of her life's work. As the credits rolled, Karoline sat quietly, tears streaming down her face. For all her achievements, what moved her most was the realization that her story wasn't hers alone. It belonged to everyone who had walked alongside her. In her later years, Karoline returned to writing, penning essays and articles that explored themes of justice, resilience, and interconnectedness. Her words resonated with readers of all ages, offering wisdom gleaned from a lifetime of experience. Publishers approached her about releasing a second book, but she declined, preferring instead to focus on mentoring emerging writers and thinkers. "There are so many voices waiting to be heard," she explained. "My job now is to amplify theirs." When Karoline finally passed away at the age of 82, the world mourned the loss of a true trailblazer. Tributes poured in from every corner of the globe, celebrating her as a champion of the underdog, a pioneer of reform, and a beacon of hope. Her funeral was held in Maplewood, where thousands gathered to pay their respects. Among them were former clients, mentees, colleagues, and strangers whose lives she had indirectly touched. As the sun set over the hills, a choir sang her favorite hymn, its melody carrying on the breeze like a promise of eternity. Today, Karoline Leavitt's name lives on, not just in statues or scholarships, but in the hearts of those who continue her mission. Her story serves as a reminder that greatness isn't measured by titles or accolades, but by the courage to stand up for what's right, even when the odds seem insurmountable. And though she is gone, her legacy endures, carried forward by the countless individuals she inspired to believe in the possibility of a brighter, fairer future.